let's talk about how the Liberals are again failing the Canadian economy, this time with steel.
Algoma announced it's laying off 1,000 steel workers, nearly a third of its workforce in the Soo. Our thoughts are with them. The Prime Minister looked them in the eye and promised he would protect their jobs, that he would negotiate a win, and I quote, have a deal by July 21st, but it was a bait and switch that is costing people their livelihoods. On top of that, Liberals are hammering the steel mill with a higher industrial carbon tax. Isn't it bad enough that the Prime Minister broke his promise on trade? Why is he going ahead with an industrial carbon tax that will kill even more steel jobs?
Obviously, our thoughts are with the workers affected by the unjustified and unjustifiable tariffs imposed by the White House, and we'll continue to work with them as Algoma Steel is going through a difficult situation, to say the least. Mr. Speaker, my team and I have been in contact with Algoma's leadership team. We absolutely have every confidence in the Algoma workers as they're going through this hardship, and we will make sure that we support them as they're developing new products and also accessing new markets. We'll fight for these jobs, Mr. Speaker.
So they have every confidence in what? The workers are going to be taking this the right way? The workers can handle losing their jobs? The workers can handle unemployment? No. Melanie Joly, another classic moment with the Minister of Industry. And this is absolutely what you'd expect from this Liberal government. Remember this picture here? Remember this. Here's Mark Carney at Algoma Steel. And of course, he's got the potted plants behind him, otherwise known as the workers who were forced to stand behind Mark Carney and look like they're very enthusiastic about Mark Carney. Wearing a hard hat, probably for the first time in his life, doesn't really fit well. None of this fits well. This is all very, very unnerving, shall we say? Because you know Mark Carney is after business for himself. We'll show you something that we discovered on X yesterday in a minute here, as soon as we discuss a little more about the steel problem here.
Large polluters pay. And so what happens...
But does that not ultimately trickle down?
No, because what the big companies are producing, by and large, are not products that we are consuming. There's some element of that, but by and large, you know, a steel company, how much steel are you using these days, Todd? I mean, not as much we used. So anyway, so that's how much steel are you using these days, Todd?
Yeah, it's worth reminding everybody that's how Mark Carney talked when he first entered the political spectrum in January of this year. Nobody uses steel anymore. We made fun of that. And of course, that was Mark Carney number one. We first met him, former governor of the Bank of Canada, former governor of the Bank of England, green lobbyist. That was who we met. But Mark Carney has continued to absolutely fail Canadians.
I mentioned earlier, $500 million loan to Algoma in September. How can that kind of money be laid out by governments and thus taxpayers, and we see these really significant job losses so soon after? Mayor Matthew Shoemaker joins me now. Hi there.
So you just heard that. They're laying out all this taxpayer money, and we're still huge job losses. Oh, it's all about the tariff. Yes. Wait. I'm just waiting to hear.
Mayor, thank you for making time on a difficult day. 1,000 workers who have gotten these layoff notices. The notice is coming just before the holidays, although the layoffs don't take effect until later. What are you saying to people who are directly affected by this?
It's a tough day, obviously, in Sault Ste. Marie, and I've been trying to convey to the community that these are our family members that need our support, and we're going to be there to support them through this challenging time. We're going to make sure that we do everything we can to try and reduce the impact or mitigate the impact that these job losses are going to have on each family and on the community as a whole.
I saw a quote from one of the local union representatives who was saying that they still have questions about how permanent these layoffs are. Is that a question in your mind, or are these jobs clearly lost for at least a great length of time?
We believe that the indefiniteness of the layoffs is a sign that these jobs are likely not to come back.
Okay. And when it comes to the cause, we've mentioned Algoma has pointed to the U.S. tariffs. To your mind, is this entirely at the feet of Donald Trump?
Well, the transition to electric arc steelmaking was going to reduce the workforce eventually. I think the original timeline was end of 26, mid 2027. But I think that the reality is much of that may have been able to have been done by retirements, by adding new capacity, which would have otherwise kept the need for employees higher. But the tariffs has really wiped all of that off the map of possibilities, and we are left facing a company that doesn't have a market for 60% of its product, which is what they used to ship down to the U.S., and that we desperately need a tariff deal negotiated and resolved in order to get that market.
Help us understand. I mentioned earlier $500 million loan to Algoma in September. How can that kind of money be laid out by governments and thus taxpayers, and we see these really significant job losses so soon after?
I think that's a legitimate question, one that should be asked of the provincial and federal governments. I do suspect that without that funding, the job losses might be even more significant. So I think that any support the federal and provincial government can give to the steel plant is important to make it sustainable for our community. And so that's why at the time, I celebrated that news as welcome news. Without it, I fear that the job losses would have been greater.
Do you think in this current trade environment, it is conceivable to have government say to big steel producers like Algoma, if we're going to give you these big loans, you can't make significant layoffs?
I think it's conceivable if the loans are of such a nature or in such a quantum that they would, sustain the operations the way they were pre-tariff. That's what I don't think the loans did in September. And so I think that's a legitimate question for the federal and provincial governments and for the company.